project where we were recreating an image, and you use the grid, and then you blow it up and you color it in with crayons. And I remember in 6th grade thinking how fun it was to blend color. And I just didn't have a lot of exposure to art, and so I didn't know, like, wow, this is really a neat thing. But that stuck with me, how cool it was to blend those colors. So then when we moved out here to Geauga County when I was in junior high, I went to Newberry High School, took all the art classes there, and just really had a lot of fun doing art. So when I went to college, I had several choices in mind as to what I wanted to do for a career. One would be journalism. I love writing, I love to read. The other was linguistics. I love language. And the other was then art. So I opted for art, and I went into art education. So that led me to being an art teacher, which I've been for almost 30 years now at Notre Dame Cathedral Latin. I also taught a little bit of elementary art. So, God, there's like 10 directions I could go in. Let me talk about being an art teacher for a minute. The neat thing about being an art teacher is what it brings to me as an artist, and then what, for me as an artist, what I can bring to the kids. So it's a symbiotic relationship. A lot of times if I'm, exploring a lesson, new materials, new content, something to teach the kids, it informs what I do, and the experimentation and the things that I do with them, I can bring back to my art. 2 years ago, I went part-time as an art teacher, and so I have the good fortune to work every other day as a teacher, and then the other day to be out in my studio. And about 8 years ago, my husband and I built a barn. I can say I helped, right, Bob? On our property. So, he, about 10 years ago, he's like, I think I want to build a barn. I said, what about the back half becomes my studio? Which it did. And it was truly, a labor of love, building this space, and much of it we did on our own. And so now I'm able to use that space to generate my own work every other day. And so what you're seeing here, much of it is from that time in the last 2 years, but you're also going to see some pieces that are earlier works of art. So moving out here when I was in junior high, I had it was really neat to come to Geauga County. Growing up in the city in Lakewood, I didn't know anything about Geauga County, a little bit. My mom was friends with some people out here, the Buttons, and there are some real Buttons here. And so my mom, we'd come out here as a kid, and I loved the country, but I didn't know that it would be such an influence. And so then raising kids, living locally, and looking at the local landscape was such an inspiration to become a landscape painter. So what you see here, you're not seeing a lot of landscape because within the last couple of years I've started to make a shift into exploring more exploration with media and collage and paint all kind of mixed together. But this is a landscape. This is just over on Pekin and Auburn, Clevy's Farm. If anybody's familiar with Clevy's Farm. Clevy's Farm has a lot of meaning to me. When I was going to college, and we had our young son, and I was coming back and forth to Hiram, and I'd bring him to my in-laws' house over on Pekin, which is now our house, and I would just admire Clevy's Farm. It was just so beautiful the way the farm, there's a hill, and you see the peak of the barn up against the hill, and it just always spoke to me. So for a lot of years, that was an inspiration, and I often come back to it. So this summer, I did this, and sometimes it's like my go-to. It's like familiar and something I love so much is that farm. And it was nice. They've given me permission. Occasionally, I go on the property and I can sketch right on location. So that's one landscape that has had a lot of meaning. This is an earlier piece, and I was just talking to Joy, the potter, about this, and she was saying this really stands out as kind of different from everything. And we were talking, and it's kind of a transitional piece. I did a show on the west side at Bay Arts in Bay Village, and I was asked to do all plein air landscape pieces. And this was 2014, and I found it was so difficult to paint landscape, I was stuck. I had to do the show, and I had pieces, and I was struggling to produce these pieces. So this was done at Orchard Hills, which is one of the Jaga Park parks. So it was kind of interesting that this show, it was like pulling teeth to get work for this show, and I found that I was more interested in exploring media and color and collaging it in my paintings. So that's, I think, part of when the transition to working abstract happened. So people ask me, well, why are you painting abstract? It wasn't a choice, it just kind of happened. Part of that came from an interest in what materials do together, what textures will do with color, relationships of colors, one to the other, shapes relating to each other. But I found when I did some of my first abstract pieces that they still had landscape elements, because I painted in landscape forever, 30 years or more. This was an early piece. This is a diptych, so these pieces are meant to work as a unit. And when I did it, right here, this to me is the horizon line. This area up here would be my sky. And then all of this energy and movement here, this would be indicative maybe of growth of a tree. Same thing over in here, can't see it through the coat rack. But then I was adding textural elements. This was some old wallpaper that somebody had that I started putting into my paintings. So I could think like a landscape painter, but play with the colors, and see what was happening. Same thing with this piece up here. To me, there's landscape elements, a little bit of horizon with that gold or yellow or tan piece of tape that's there.